Hi, everyone. First of all, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, to be with you today. And I want to congratulate you all for your perseverance through what was a brutal period of time. You guys probably know, I think, better than anyone else just how bad things can get business-wise. So congratulations for getting through. It sounds like, from talking with Peter and other people here, that the business is picking up. And so I think that's great for all of us. A little background on me first. Anybody familiar with Stratfor? Anybody's credit card hacked? I don't know if anybody knows of Stratfor. I was a founder of a company called Stratfor, which does global intelligence studies, but they are probably most known for being hacked by the anonymous hacker group last December. And they lost, I think, 39,000 credit cards and all sorts of random, highly privileged information. So it was kind of a disaster. So that might have been how you might have heard of them. I got an MBA at the University of Texas and spent 4 years at Microsoft in Redmond, which was an adventure. My last year and a half, I was responsible for web strategy for the company to pull together the Office team and the Windows team and the Bing team and all these different teams into a coherent strategy about what we should do about web and social and so on. And that was like a United Nations effort of sorts, in the sense that everybody was independently sort of organized and sort of in a position to make their own business decisions, so it was highly decentralized at Microsoft, and that was a brutal effort to kind of get everybody on the same page. Wrote 2 books with Mari Smith. We are kind of yin and yang, Mari and I. Mari talks about rainbows and unicorns and how great social is. I am the data junkie. I am a cynic, and so you're not going to get a lot of happy, wonderful, I guess, platitudes about social from me. You'll get hard data. Hard data really kind of, for me, is everything. And then we have this company, Polygraph, which is a social data mining agency where we help people mine all the great things, I think, that are on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and so on, and help them make money from it. That's really kind of what we do at Polygraph. And this is my better half. We're expecting our first kid in December. So life is about to change dramatically for me. So I was thinking about how to talk about all these things going on in digital, which is kind of a way to kind of think of all of this, the things that are happening with iPads and tablets and PCs and Macs and Facebook and Twitter and so on. And I was thinking of this, and I was reminded of a very recent example of my friends Carter and Carrie. They got married a few years ago, had 2 kids, and bought this great house in Seattle. And they loved it. Everything was great about it. But there was one thing. He said, this house needs a few modern touches. It's great on the outside, everything looks great, but on the inside, it kind of needs a little bit of work. I guess this was 3 weeks ago or so. What can I do to quickly modernize this house with minimal effort? Okay? Carter went to Facebook with this question. Okay? He might have called his mom, he might have called some friends, he might have talked to people around the water cooler or at lunch or something like that. But he also took this question to Facebook. Enter my friend Brian. This is Brian summiting Mount St. Helens. Good friend. And Brian says, hey, when I moved into my condo, I had this really old thermostat, and it was miserable. I mean, look at this thing, right? I don't know how old this is. Maybe you guys probably have somebody here probably know. And he said, so I was doing a little bit of research. I found this thing called a Nest. Has anybody heard of the Nest? Does anybody have a Nest? How do you like it? Love it. Well, look at it, I guess, compare this back to this, right? I mean, you'd have to love it. But look, I mean, it goes from something that was functional, that was analog, et cetera, to this device that is computerized, that is accessible via Wi-Fi. You can set it from anywhere in the world. You you traveling, forget to set your heater. Cat might, I don't know, leave your heater off and your cat might die when it's exposed to the elements or whatever. But the point is, this is a 20th century experience. And now we have the Nest, which is a 21st century experience, right? So Carter took the advice of Brian to look into this, and he started reviewing a few things. So I was talking to him about it. He said he hit this article in particular, a review on GigaOM, which is a relatively new publication that covers technology, and got this great review, just tons and tons of detail. You may notice also 31 people chime in as well, so it's not just what the publication is saying, the new media publication, okay, this thing that didn't exist 10 years ago, but additionally comments. It's not the Washington Post, it's not the New York Times, this is a review in a widely respected new media publication. 31 other people chime in, but this was part of what influenced Carter in his purchase decision. He went to Amazon as well, and I'm sure almost all of you here have gone to Amazon to look at things, and you've probably been influenced by the reviews. You read helpful, favorable reviews, you read helpful, critical reviews. You're gathering information so that you know when you open up the box and that Nest, you know exactly what's going to happen. This is all detail, though, not coming from Nest, not coming from a salesperson. This is all coming from peers, from random people, Daniel, and an Amazon shopper, an anonymous Amazon shopper. But this is all sort of what people are saying about their experience with this particular product. Combine this, and you get into this area of where Carter is comfortable making a purchase decision after reviewing what's very much non-traditional methods of media, things that didn't exist 10 years ago, that are now very much playing into the decisions people are making. So what did Carter do? He went to his local Apple store. He didn't even buy it at Amazon. He had to have it immediately after reading the reviews on it. And he went to the Apple store in University Village there in Seattle. Anybody here from Seattle? No. And then Carter shared his post-purchase experience on Facebook. After moving into the new house, I could not stand the 20-plus-year-old thermostat that was marring our elegant dining room. Heard great things, excited to see it, blah, blah, blah. Whoa, I was not disappointed. I installed the Nest easily in less than 15 minutes. Very cool, right? 11 people like it. Other people chime in, hey, I've been eyeing it for a while. Looks sweet. It's like tasting a teaspoon of the future. I brought this up as an example because I think it actually highlights a few things that have happened here and how things are different and just how they're fundamentally different, how people are making decisions. And we're all here to know why would people purchase, right? I mean, I don't think we're here to influence comments on Facebook. We're not here to make people like something. We're here so people buy things, right? So in this case, with Carter and Carrie, life happened, there's a cry for help. He communicates that on Facebook. There is a social and publicly communicated solution provided to him on Facebook. It's a product that just came out less than a year ago. He did product research and reviewed the reviews about this product. He purchased it at his nearby Apple store, and he got the affirmation and communicated his happiness and his satisfaction with that product again on Facebook. Okay? This happens all the time. What's interesting about this is that all of this, everything that I've highlighted here, didn't really exist in New Year's 2007. Okay? That's a little more than 5 years ago. So if you think about Facebook, Facebook was just publicly released to the general public 6 years ago. Okay, 6 years ago yesterday, I think it was. That anybody could create a Facebook account. At that point in time, there were about 20 million people on Facebook. Right now, there's 1 billion, okay? Just under 1 billion. But the fact is, business and marketing and how people are making decisions to buy things, to remodel houses, to remodel little pieces of the parts of their houses, to rip out their thermostat and replace it with a new one, et cetera, et cetera. All this has been redefined in the last 5.5 years. And I think that's a very profound and sudden shift, all of a sudden, that's taken place here in marketing. And I think there are implications certainly in a lot of other areas as well. This is just a marketing case study. So what are the trends that are making this happen? I thought we would cover this because I wanted to kind of go through with all of you, what are the high-level things that are happening out there to make all of this happen so rapidly? We could simplify this whole thing and say, well, it's Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs brought about this revolution. But I would argue it's in the miniaturization of the computing process. Anybody recognize this? Mars rover, right? Well, that iPhone has 4 times more computing power than the Mars rover. The iPhone he was just holding up. I mean, that's incredible. The Voyager, the NASA Voyager probe or whatever that's going out into outer space, it has way more computing power than that thing has, and that thing's representing humankind in other galaxies. Interestingly, there's more computing power in an iPhone than NASA had in all of 1969. So what we've done is taken what used to be sort of massive supercomputing power and put it into a little tiny device that people are addicted to. All people have. People right now in this presentation are using it. But I digress. I wanted to show a few charts and graphs since I am Captain Data and I'm super data oriented, but I wanted to tell you the story of what we're seeing and where the trends are so you can position your businesses where they need to be as time goes on. In terms of global internet device sales, you'll notice the personal computer, and a lot of people have talked about this, relatively slow, flat growth rate, predictable and so on. But the PC, I don't think it's dead as people think. I mean, there's lots of uses for the PC and so on. But it's kind of chugging along. But look at what's happened with smartphones just in the last few years. And we're right here in 2012. So we have, I don't know, I guess another 700, 800 million smartphones people will be buying and using worldwide over the next 4 years. We have the advent of tablets, and if you can kind of compare this part of the chart to this part of the chart, we can project that around 2017, 2018, there will be more tablets in use than PCs. So, I thought it was an interesting tidbit. If you look at the global smartphone penetration forecast here, people are going from, how many people here, I guess a lot of folks probably did, had some Nokia, those old Nokia phones, and little tiny bricks, and they couldn't do anything but call people, basically, and text. That's what they're calling here feature phone, and smartphone are things like iPhones and Samsung Galaxies and things like that. So what we're seeing is a period of time where the penetration, the global penetration of phones over the next 4 or 5 years will skew very heavily in favor of smartphones that can do things like surf the internet on the phone and tell people where you are and so on. This is the tablet sales forecast. So you see we're right here. All right, so we have e-readers and then basically iPad and then I guess everything else is like down here. But we're going to have an increase, about a 3-4-fold increase in tablets here over the next few years as well. So your consumers, people that are buying your products and so on, if you integrate, as Nest I think is effectively done with this Wi-Fi and the iPhone app and so on, if you integrate the tablet or the smartphone experience into your trusty industrial device, you're seen as being all of a sudden way ahead of the curve. So along with miniaturization, there have been some changes to search and access to information. It used to be that you would go into a showroom and you would look at the brochure for a product, and that's how you would conduct your product research. You would look at the products and so on. But now that my wife is doing all her baby shopping, she doesn't go into a store for anything. Women would shop in stores for clothes and so on, but these experiences are being changed very, very rapidly. What we see is explosive growth from a lot of these businesses that are modernizing these experiences. So this is just one. This is a shopping experience on Google Shopping. Has anybody ever used Google Shopping? What they do is they scan the internet. They use the same search technology they've always used, and they apply it to products. So they apply it to getting an inventory of the different things that are available. They apply it to pricing, and they let you basically do comparison shopping from inside Google. So you never have to leave the comfort of your own couch. Groupon. We love Groupon. But Groupon, what they've done is they've aggregated buyers and done this in a way where you can be able to get something at a discounted rate in order to basically build the capacity for these businesses that have an opportunity for it. This is something, again, didn't really exist in 2007. Personally, I think the business model is very flawed, but it's still an advancement. It's something that's taken place here in the last few years. And Fab.com, this is, my wife is on this all the time, which is really dangerous. For any of you who are on Fab.com, what they do, they have a curated experience where they go out to the world and they find the neatest things they can, and they make those things available for 7 days at a time. So it's just changing the shopping experience pretty significantly. But people use Fab.com to get neat things all the time. It's a completely different shopping experience. If you look at search queries from mobile, okay, so I've shown you charts and so on about smartphone growth and so on, but look at, this is the US search queries on Google for mobile devices in the past year, and what you've seen is a major, major hockey stick type increase in the number of search queries that have taken place. What that means, unfortunately, for folks like Best Buy, is that they become a glorified, as several analysts have called them, a glorified showroom for Amazon.com. But that's the reality of what they're facing. So this is a chart that tells you what small businesses do to find customers. And I think small businesses are always a really interesting gauge on what's really effective, because if small businesses do something, they're not going to do it very long without knowing that it works, because they're limited in time and budget, and they've got 100 things going on. But in terms of what local businesses report as the sources of new customers, you see the top two things: word of mouth and search engines, internet. These traditional means of advertising are changing as well. So if you think about search and how people are changing how they find information about products and services and so on, you can see all the old school way of doing things, even advertising, just in general advertising, pushing a marketing message to a customer, is getting less and less effective as customers discover new products and services. Social. And so we'll talk about this as the phenomenon that I like to kind of call this is the web as the water cooler. And this is kind of in line with that example with Carter and Brian and the Nest device. If you contrast this picture, you contrast the fact that 20 years ago, people would sit around in a bar, sit around dinner and talk about experiences and things that they like and things that they don't like. But today, that thing is taking place. Any of you who have teenagers know that people live here on these devices all the time. My wife gets furious with me all the time because at 8 o'clock at night, I'll be watching some show she's watching, but I have my laptop in front of me. Right? Because we're not just kind of screwing off there, we're finding out what other people are experiencing, and we're sharing thoughts and ideas and our perspectives on politics or religion or whatever taboo subject that we feel obligated to talk about. But this is where it's happening. It's a three-screen experience, and for especially as you get younger in demographic groups, younger people are much more comfortable sharing detailed information about what they like and what they don't like and so on. And what we see with social is kind of the development of hubs. So you have people, and you know this from your own personal life, you probably have a go-to person for technology. You probably have a go-to person for the best hot restaurant you have been to, and the go-to person for travel tips, and the go-to person for hotels, and where to eat when you're in Chicago or whatever, right? We have these hubs that have sort of developed where people look to specific influencers for information about, trusted information about whatever it is that they want to know. So, this is very important in this new medium, because if you can win over the trusted person here, you've won all of those friends that look at that person for advice and for feedback. And so that's why in the world of social marketing, people talk so much about the concept of winning over the influencer. Because if you win one person, you might actually win 50. So we're looking here at a chart. This is why do people recommend products and services and brands? Because I think this really kind of cuts at the heart of the issue for people like us that are looking to sell more effectively. In the modern context, people will recommend brands, products, or services because they had a great experience, and they'll do so because they want to help other people. Okay? It kind of cuts the other way too, because if somebody is motivated by helping other people, and there's this product or service that's really terrible, like, they're going to warn them to stay away. So it's even worse, right? It's not just the affirmative. It's not like the Nest, I had a great experience with it, great. It's if there's some competitor to the Nest that doesn't do things really well, people will evangelize against you in order to satisfy this 37% of the market shares products, services, and so on. So it's very, very important to execute well with your products. Interestingly enough as well here, we have the percentage of the impact of liking a brand or service on Facebook. And what does that actually mean? Well, for half the people, it means nothing at all. But for 54% here, it actually means something very, very significant. Okay? So I would expect, and with certainly the discussions we've had with Facebook and the things that we know about what's coming down the pipeline for Facebook, Facebook is very much going to be taking advantage of this in coming years. I think you'll see some really fascinating things take place. But liking somebody on Facebook, or liking a page on Facebook, I should say, is the beginning of kind of understanding how that person is in your sales funnel and moving them along to a purchase. So it's valuable in a lot of contexts, if not immediately, certainly down the road. And this is the one chart to me that's really the eye-opener. This was done last year. This was a study that was done that wanted to see the impact of different kinds of marketing on the effective sort of purchase value or spending value people had. And what they found in this study, was that if social is involved in the marketing of a product or service, people spend twice as much as the entire digital channel as a whole. So if you take social marketing and you take everything else and you put it in a bucket, if you include social media marketing into the mix and somebody experiences that, they're spending twice as much as any other digital channel you could focus on. So social matters. I think social has an issue with tracking that Facebook and others are working to solve right now, where you can see, hey, this person liked my page, this person responded to my advertisement, this person purchased and became a customer, because that's really all we all care about. Has anyone here looked at Facebook offers for their business and made any offers available, like a coupon or something like that? Anybody? Know what Facebook offers is? It's a couponing system inside Facebook, but that's one of many things I think that we're going to see. This is the scary, scary social landscape as it currently stands. So people have seen this, they've seen these charts and seen these numbers, and they've said, all right, the reason that people make purchases and the reason that people decide one product over another is largely becoming influenced by what they're hearing from friends and brands and so on Facebook. Okay? And the result of that is 1 million startups all wanting to kind of grab onto that gravy train. Okay? Now, I don't think it's as complicated as having to adopt every service in this system, and I would not. I absolutely would not. I want to focus on sort of how I would approach it moving forward if I were in your shoes, and then we'll open up for some Q&A. This is the Gartner technology adoption cycle chart, and I don't know if any of you have seen this, but a lot of products and technologies follow this curve, okay? You have some technology, it's hot, the early adopters jump onto it. Oh my God, it's changing the world. And then, the cliff. The trough of disillusionment. That's the point in time where people sort of give up on the product. Okay, does any of this sound familiar with Facebook stock? Those of you that track that. Okay? There's this trough of disillusionment. This happens, this pattern repeats with new disruptive technologies on almost every case. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to use this thing, and then there's what's called the plateau of productivity. If I'm CEO of a business really of any kind, and I'm looking at social as how people are communicating with each other, communicating with brands, and so on, to me, mastering this chart is probably like the number one thing in terms of strategy, like understanding where things are in this chart. Like Facebook is probably right out here, I would argue. They have almost 1 billion users. They haven't figured out how to monetize them yet. They sell ads that don't convert. They have fans that don't convert. None of it converts. So from a business perspective, it's very, questionable as to whether or not it's going to work out. But I would argue that the IPO is here, and then we entered very rapidly into the trough of disillusionment. But anything that your marketers, anything that your team wants to bring you from a technology perspective or a social perspective, you really should think about from this perspective. If you think about the web, and you think about e-commerce, okay, and selling products on the internet, we're over here, right? We've been through this for 15 years. We kind of know what it's all about. Facebook's back here. I'd say maybe Facebook's up here. I wouldn't say it's down here. Other things are down here because they didn't prove themselves. But understand that this is a good way of kind of looking at where do people fit in, where do technologies fit in, and so on. To me, though, the best example is the case of Priceline stock, okay? I don't know if any of you have gotten in down here. If you did, congratulations. But to me, this is a stock chart that very much mimics, the Gartner chart I showed you. Huge expectations, trough of disillusionment, right? Slope of enlightenment. Oh, this Priceline thing actually does make some sense. And then arguably plateau productivity over here. But it's funny that this case is just hilarious. And if you had acted upon this and applied it in the case of Priceline, you would probably all have retired by now and be on a beach somewhere. But back to this. A vast majority of social technologies and products and startups that are out there are never going to get through the trough of disillusionment. They will actually get there and they will suffer and die. And I actually think social is very, very simple. It's gotten very, very simple. I'll show you guys this chart right here. Minutes spent on social networks every month. Okay? And I'm data-driven. I'm not an apologist for Facebook or anything like that, but I'm data-driven, and I'm seriously affected by a chart that looks like this. If you think that social networking as a whole is something that's going to matter and be a driver for business and a way for people to communicate and the digital water cooler of sorts, guess what? Facebook is the only real digital water cooler that's out there. They dwarf everything else that's there. It's not to say LinkedIn can't be successful. It's not to say Twitter can't be successful. Not to say other companies can't be successful, but advertising dollars and advertising initiatives follow where the minutes spent are. That's why television is so important. That's why radio used to be maybe more important than it is now. Time spent on Facebook is a 98% winner in this category. And I think that you all have to think about that in a profound way as you think about marketing your products and services in the future. So if I were to approach this, I would acknowledge the current situation, okay? there's been this explosion of devices. Everybody has a voice. Everybody can say whatever it is they want to say. Some of you may have been the victims of a really bad, ineffective reviewer who trashed your product, your service, your company in some way. But that's the reality. It's out there. Access to product information, pricing, etc. All these things are widely available to your customers. Okay? So obfuscation is probably not going to work for that segment of the market that's price conscious. Other people who aren't price conscious, you have to differentiate on a different level. With the Nest can sell for $249 because the experience is fantastic. Does it really cost $249 for a thermostat? I don't know, but they decided not to go at price, they go at experience, and that's why they're so successful. And then with social and so on, focus on areas with lasting power because you could blow a lot of money, and agencies are in a great business of selling you on things like location-based services and all these other products and services that may never escape the trough of disillusionment. So focus on what you think will matter. And, take a bite at a time, right? These new technologies can be brought to bear not just in the marketing context, but in a variety of operational contexts for your business, whether you're arming people in the field with an iPad or a tablet. You're trying to normalize data. You don't want people writing things on forms. You want people using an iPad that might end up, putting data in the right place so it's accessible in real time. Maybe that's a huge operational improvement brought about by technology. Maybe you want to improve customer service. You want to improve some other operational efficiencies in your business and communicate better internally amongst different stakeholders in different parts of your company. What I think is critical with a lot of these things is to make sure that you set the goals, have high, very, very measurable standards, and you hold people to them, especially your agencies, because your agencies will fleece you blind. They will. We will spend some amount of money to improve some measurable business objective by some percent over the next whatever time period you want. Make sure you tell these agencies, your boss. One of my roles at Microsoft was that I was responsible for managing several of our agency relationships, and they hated me. Because I was very firm about saying, if we're going to do something, let's make sure we can measure success. And I think that's key to all this. And then make sure that you empower the people, whoever it is, whether it's your internal personnel, people you want to train, or people that you bring in from the outside, to execute a plan created by some process that says, all right, these are the right things for us to do business-wise. Social is no different really than anything else in this respect, hold people to standards. This is an example of something that I've helped someone with recently. This is just a little snippet from their plan. But this was it was a consumer chain that we're probably all familiar with, food services. They wanted to do a few different things all around improving customer satisfaction. They felt like they had a customer satisfaction problem. So what we did is we inventoried for them and said, all right, well, what are the things that we want to do? We want to personalize the executive team, extend reach in social media, and monitor real-time customer feedback. Okay? But very specifically, we said, what's the appropriate channel? How are we going to do this? And what is the metric that we're going to hold ourselves to? We're not going to hit every metric. Some things are out of our control. But let's make sure we're all thinking in terms of numbers and what we're going to affect. What business outcomes are we going to affect or improve? So in closing, I would say that this can be very frustrating. So I very much understand what you're going through if you look at all this and say, no, it's not for us or it's difficult or something like that. But I think you can definitely do it. We had a few. Do we have a few minutes for questions? Yeah, we do have a few minutes for questions. So I thought I'd open it up just to address anything about digital that maybe some of you guys are thinking about, or any questions you guys might have.
How do you see that interfacing with more like business commercial kind of things with social media?
Well, okay, so the question was, how do you see all this, the social media interfacing on the business-to-business front? I think it's more difficult. I would probably look at other parts of modernization, like making information flow better than maybe in social. I mean, the trouble with social is that you're out trying to target specific individual people in a variety of other companies. LinkedIn is a really good application for business to business. sense in terms of identifying people, influencing people, and all that. And there's a variety of ways that I would do that. And LinkedIn really is the leading business-to-business social networking community. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting things there. But there's some basic blocking and tackling, like profiling your company, and you can run ads there, although I've done it a few times, and it really didn't pay off. It might have changed, but so far it hasn't paid off for us. So I would focus there maybe on LinkedIn, and then think about the use of web and mobile technologies to make, if you're working B2B with other companies, like that might be the best way to do it, is for operational efficiencies between companies.
So increase your touch points then with the other media that you're using already, like it's beyond current using, if they have a iPad sponsorship, that type of thing.
Well, no, what I mean is that, like, all these devices create a lot. So the question was about, should we interface on the iPad or how do we use some of these other things? And so what I would say is that, like, there are these technologies today that make it really easy for companies to merge data. So if you're working B2B with another company, like instead of TPS reports and things that you're faxing back and forth and things like that, like you can integrate very, very easily using technology. And so that's maybe how I would view B2B as an opportunity as it relates to tech and digital divide. Like anything that's done on paper really shouldn't be anymore, I would argue. Maybe I'm a little bit of a tech apologist in that respect, but basically if you're using a form for something, there's probably a better way. Because somebody has to enter that data into something else, usually, right? I mean, that's a huge operational problem. Other questions?
Hi, I was intrigued by your comment about pricing and how social media makes pricing so available. For a lot of the people in this room, they sell products to somebody in between the end user.
Right.
And for a lot of other people, the price that is sold, that product is sold at, will vary dramatically based on the type of customer, the volumes of what they're buying, that sort of thing. So it's not a strictly iPhone costs the same for everybody kind of experience. Right. It occurs to me that if you think we're going to go to a world in which everybody is going to be going to Google search to find prices, there's a danger for manufacturers in terms of what price they list, because they could screw themselves right at the very start by listing some incredibly suggested manufacturer retail price that makes them look like they're way out of the league of everybody else, whereas the truth is they're never selling that product at that price anyway.
Right. It kind of reminds me of the old adage, when someone asks, what's the price, what do you have? But as it relates to this, I mean, we deal with this in the software business as well. I mean, there's a list price, and then there's a conditional price, sort of based on your situation, because that can very much impact, whether, availability, where you're shipping something, I guess, in this context or whatever. For us in software, there are other considerations about dynamic pricing. And in a lot of cases, like, we will publish some list prices to set a minimum expectation, and then say, call us, in that last kind of column for anything outside what, appears in this very, very recommended chart. And that's what we've seen a lot of people do in our business is that kind of thing.
But is that what we should do in our business?
It may be. I mean, it's funny. What we're starting to see more in software is that people will publish a list price, but they'll have some open-ended column in the SKU chart that will say, for your special situation, we will consult with you, right? Make it sound like a value add as opposed to we're going to stick you with a massive bill. It has to be this consultation, this value-added business partnership kind of thing. We're seeing that a lot more in software and technology. So, I think we have time maybe for one more question. Anything? I'll be outside, I guess, 10, 15 minutes or so if anybody wants to talk in more detail before I get whisked off.
Any tips on how to promote a Facebook page? I mean, you put it out there and it's on Facebook. Should we promote it? And if so, how? Yeah,
so the standard, I think the standard sort of best practices for that is you have to commit to publishing to it consistently, so keep people interested. interested, so just publish some observation, hey, the weather's great in Boston today, or, happy Monday, or something like that. Right, I mean, it's a content marketing problem, so you have to commit to that, but that's simple. I mean, it's relatively easy. There are ways to do that pretty easily, I think. I'll tell you, in one case recently, we started doing some of Facebook's new ads to drive fan count specifically, and we took a property on $2 a day. We took it from 0 to 1,100 fans in like a month on $2 a day. And that's one of the things, like, if you have a Facebook page with like less than 100 fans, like, it kind of looks like a joke. So if you're gonna do it, make sure you can get that fan count pretty high, pretty rapidly. And ads are a really effective way of doing that. Now, whether or not it's immediately gonna be a huge revenue driver for your business, that's a different conversation. But I think it's a long-term play that you wanna make there. All right? One more.
When we survey younger people, these are smaller groups, and generally we're trying to find out about access for information, for product information, learning about something, getting some new information. The general feedback is, it's not on Facebook, it's not Twitter, they're Googling.
Yeah.
And my question is, you put up a slide with the number of minutes that Facebook has. Is there any data on how much people are using Google?
Yeah, so Facebook overtook Google last year, but don't misunderstand what I'm saying about Facebook replacing Google. I'm not saying that at all. I don't think there's any replacement for Google for what's called organic search results. So organic search results are when you get at the top without paying for it. There's nothing getting in the way of Google anytime soon for getting basic product information. Now, I will say this, Facebook announced recently they're going to get into integrating search into the Facebook experience soon, and that could shake things up a little bit, but right now, I mean, investing in Google and Google search engine optimization is a great investment and remains to be. And it's why their stock is doing well. I mean, do not count out Google. And Google has a new social network called Google Plus that's starting to get a little bit of traction, and that sort of integrates it from Google's perspective. So, but yeah, Google plus Facebook, I think a vast majority of people, and this is kind of a good thing to close on, but Google and Facebook, if people focused on those two things and kind of ignored everything else, like I would say 4 out of 5 people that I talk to would be satisfied. Like that would be a really good way to go. Do not ignore Google. Do not take anything I've said that anybody should ignore Google. All right. Well, thank you all again. I appreciate you having me.